Mr. Speaker, I rise to second this motion. As I said in the morning, I was deeply embarrassed by the fact that we had opportunity to put serious questions to the Cabinet Secretary responsible for health this morning. But in my view, we squandered that opportunity, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, that point was demonstrated later in the afternoon when the very senator for Embu, Senator Mondiki, then comes up in the afternoon with a question to the Committee of Health that he should have directed to the CS of Health, but instead wasted time massaging the CS for Health. Mr. Speaker, it is the position that on the 27th of March, the delegation of government walked out of a negotiation with the doctors. Mr. Speaker, since the 27th of March, there has been no further meeting between the ministry and the doctors because the ministry insists that the doctors must give up that one right that they have to enforce their rights, Mr. Speaker, the right to go to strike or to go on strike so that a conversation can be had. Mr. Speaker, as Senator Muma has said, the government today must understand that CBS do not expire. Collective bargaining agreements do not expire unless and until a new one is registered in the Labor and Employment Code. Mr. Speaker, when a government comes in and finds an agreement in place, it is the responsibility of that government to honor those agreements. In fact, in the morning, you heard the CS for Defense, Mr. Speaker, saying that he continued with the work at Uhuru Park because he found that arrangement in place, even though he himself admitted that he knows that was an illegal move. So the illegal ones, this government is very happy to continue with them. But the ones that make sense, the legal ones registered even in accordance with the law, those ones they decide that they are not going to execute. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to request or ask the CS for Health in the morning whether she understands and whether the government understands the sanctity of a CBA. It is an agreement that you have entered into on your own volition. Nobody has forced you. And once you sign a document, Mr. Speaker, the law is that you cannot run away from agreements you have gotten into yourself. That is why some communities, Mr. Speaker, don't believe in divorce. That once you have paid dowry, you remain. And I think that is something that your friend, the CS for Agriculture, understands very well. Mr. Speaker, there is also something I heard from government that really broke my heart. That in fact, an IG of police, who I have said publicly, I have serious doubts as to his capacity to hold public office. Because, Mr. Speaker, he does not seem to understand the Bill of Rights, that in fact people have the right to freely assemble. I have been seeing doctors in the streets. Mr. Speaker, they come there dressed in their white coats. They don't look threatening at all. But when an IG of police says that he's going to bludgeon doctors who are on strike, Mr. Speaker, this is somebody who has no idea what he's doing in the office of Inspector General of Police. Then you have a ministry saying that they are aware that the civil protests, Mr. Speaker, are being sponsored by cartels. And they are the ones financing this industrial action. I would have loved for the CS to tell us, to name before this house, who are these cartels that are financing and encouraging industrial action. The industrial action stems from the lack of respect for agreements that have been entered into by government and the doctors. Mr. Speaker, I also heard her in the morning saying that, these doctors must respect court orders. I wanted to know from the CS, where does she get the moral authority? Where does she get the moral authority to lecture anyone about respect for court orders? Mr. Speaker, is in this same government that told us that those court orders don't have to be respected. I heard the president himself speaking on the Ihith and Ndunyunjeru Road, where the Environment and Land Court has said you cannot build a road through the Abadeas. He instructed a PS, I saw it myself with my own eyes, saying, wewe jenga hii barabara. Why can't he do the same? Because, Mr. Speaker, it is government that sets the pace for respect of court orders. So they have no moral authority to tell doctors that until and unless Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the seconding I am doing. So, therefore, Mr. Speaker, nothing stops the CS. Nothing stops the officials in the ministry. And I met them outside the corridor and I told them they have embarrassed themselves in the ministry today. All they need to do, they can have informal meetings with doctors. Sometimes these things are resolved not in formal settings where you are using all this tough language and you want to show us. And I've heard the president today say, Mr. Speaker, that if you're supporting doctors, you pay them with your money. I want to remind him, the money that pays doctors, the money that pays him is not his money. We support doctors. We want our taxes to be used to pay doctors. I second, Mr. Speaker.